Yeah, I don't just think it's the Easter Bunny. I think that we could say that maybe Valentine's Day there was many forgetful boyfriends, and these boyfriends are trying to make up for it with many Easter eggs in advance for this year. But actually, like humor aside, what we're seeing here is again more trends of investors buying everything in Q1. We spoke yesterday about world markets; it's an all-time highs. That was the same for gold and Bitcoin over Q1. This week we've also had the cocoa price hit record highs, an all-time high for 10,000 for the first time ever. What this comes down to, though, is actually supply and demand dynamics. We have agricultural fields here in Ivory Coast and Ghana, which unfortunately are suffering from a weather drought. There's a lot of adverse weather. At the same time, these plantations have not been developed and invested in for a number of years just because of lower profits. So essentially now with the bad weather, we also have that trees are decaying. They're now subject to disease. So supply and demand dynamics here are stipulating that actually we're going to have a lot of demand for cocoa. But at the same point, we're not having that much supply because of, unfortunately, the weather drought we're having in these nations. And that's actually what's pushing the price up.
And let's have a look now at some news from the stock indexes. Trump Media and Technology Group was one of a number of big movers on Tuesday. Trump Media and Technology Group jumping 16.1%.
Yeah, it had a market valuation on its debut of NASDAQ now close to $6 billion and $8 billion at its peak. We saw more than 50% rise just on the first day. That's despite the social media new entrant actually having less than 5 million registered users as we see right now, but the financial information on this is actually quite scarce. Actually, what I think is happening here is we have the US presidential elections that are going to happen in 6 months' time. Investors should not forget this when it comes to the end of Q2 and planning for Q3, the second half of this year. And it's quite clear that Donald Trump is in a clear position where he could become president now for the second time. That's later in 2024. If we thought that America first and always narrative we saw in the years from 2016 to 2020 during his first term was hard, I think it's going to go into even more overdrive during a potential second term. And I think what investors are buying into here, that the upcoming potential president is actually going to be unleashing all of his narratives and his rhetoric on this social media network. And investors are buying into advance of that stock because of this.
And meanwhile, Jameel, the yen, we've just learnt, has hit a 34-year low against the dollar.
Yeah, this is really going to cause some alarm bells both for the Bank of Japan and Japanese officials, because we've seen the Japanese yen weaken all the way from 110 all the way above 150 now over the past 9 months or so. And we've seen regular interventions verbally from the Bank of Japan and Japanese government officials against yen weakness, but in fact the market trend is clearly on the opposite, and we hit the highest levels now in close to 34 years. It's a big milestone number. The concern here is that the Bank of Japan are going to be under a lot of pressure now to intervene into the currency markets to strengthen the yen prospects. But for as long as the US dollar remains historically strong, and that's still the case, we're still going to see a weaker yen trend, which is why investors are still selling the Japanese yen up until we actually see actions rather than words from those Japanese officials.
Jameel, thank you very much for those insights.